Hello. Hi, this is Nick Ford. I'm the Chief Tech Evangelist for Mendix. We're coming up to the top of the hour. We're just going to give it a few seconds to let the rest of the attendees join. So we'll be back with you in a few seconds to start the presentation. Okay, it's top of the hour. I'm going to get started. We have a very packed agenda and just 30 minutes to cover off the presentation. As I've said, my name is Nick Ford. I'm the Chief Tech Evangelist for Mendix. I have one objective for the next 30 minutes, and that's to demonstrate to you how Mendix as a low-code platform differentiates itself from its competitors and delivers rapid application development speed to our customers. I want to start with an image of a race car in this particular case. You hear a lot in the low-code world of accelerated development, 10x time to speed to market, delivering applications rapidly, and it's something that a lot of our customers that talk to Mendix are focused on heavily. And this is a good example of a vehicle that has a high potential for delivering accelerated speed, but yet it struggles to lay down and utilize that speed for forward momentum. It's spinning its wheels. It's highly capable, but lacks the control and ability to be able to lay down that capability and performance to drive itself forward. And yes, I mean, part of this is about showmanship. And equally, I think when you're looking at low-code platforms, that's an area that you need to focus in on. So for the next 30 minutes, what I want to look at is a couple of things. If you take the same sort of analogy towards low-code platforms and delivering applications at speed, in order to create and harness true speed, you require, to build applications, you require two vital ingredients. And without those ingredients, you're unable really to take any of the speed that's generated by low-code platforms and apply them to your organization in a successful way. And those two ingredients are collaboration and control. And I would suggest that without collaboration and control, achieving the level of accelerated development that you need as organizations is unachievable. So let me take those two particular instances and try and unravel them and demonstrate the Mendix platform in such a way as to highlight where we focus in delivering high levels of control and deep collaboration to accelerate your application development. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap my screen here. I'm going to open up a web browser and my mobile. And what I'm showing here is an application which has been developed using the Mendix platform in just 10 days. It's a claims application that provides the user with electronic first notification of loss. So what you'll see is I'm working on my mobile device at the moment. If I open up the device, hit make a claim, I can select the individual goods that I want to claim against. I can report that they're stolen. This is all driven off a hybrid application running on the device itself. So highly efficient claims app and part of a suite of applications that have been developed using the Mendix platform. The same application has a fully responsive design and a capability to drive conversation through chatbot. So we're looking at the same application here working with a chatbot. So if I just ask the chatbot for some help, it will provide a conversation thread to the user using IBM Watson IoT conversation. So this is driving an external API which will drive the user through responsive chatbot delivery to enable them to engage with this particular product in a better way. So I have an idea. As a user, I have basic Mendix skills and design skills. I have a full sandbox environment that I can use to make prototypes and changes to applications. And I think it would be a great idea if we could change this application to provide some additional functionality. That functionality I'd like to apply is a translation option. So the ability to be able to take the chatbot and instantly translate the text that's coming back from the bot into a different language. I think they're a neat addition to the application. So let's get started on that. As I say, I have the skills to do that. I have a sandbox through which I can add new capabilities to this application directly from within my browser. So let's click on this button on the right-hand side here. What this will do is open up the Mendax Web Modeling environment. So Mendix has a web modeler. It's completely frictionless. What it allows you to do is to instantly open up an application and get to work using a controlled environment. So we're working within our own sandbox. We can get straight from the application into the browser. And I get a visual of the screen that I was on. So everything that you see is what you see is what you get. And if I just open up each of the responsive page patterns and form factors, I'll see the screen respond according to whether it's a tablet or it's a mobile device, directly from within inside the page editor of the web modeling environment. So a little bit of orientation around the platform. On the left-hand side, we have navigation around the model its entirety, and on the right-hand side, we have access to the Atlas UI design framework. And the design framework provides non-UX designers, non-developers with the ability to be able to rapidly build great-looking applications through reusable components. And those are things like headers, building blocks, layouts, and lists that are predefined components, which I could just drag onto the page editor, for example, drop one on there, and we're able to configure and customize that header to meet our requirements. So very simple process of creating great UI based on design patterns provided via internal UX designers from within your organization, or through templates that are provided within the Mendix platform. Okay, so what we also have within the page editor is the ability to use widgets. So widgets allow me to define how I use data. So that might be a list view, a text view, a date picker, for example, or it could be working with buttons or specific layouts. Again, design patterns created to make the life of a non-professional developer, even a line of business citizen developer, simple and easy to create great intuitive user interfaces. I can also see from within the page editor access to over 4,000 widgets that are available from within our App Store, both community-based widgets and indeed widgets that I may create within my own internal organization that I want to share with other users. And I can view a widget from the App Store, and if need be, I can download that widget directly into my toolbox and start to use that widget as part of my development process. So let's get to and start building the changes that we talked about. What I'd like to do is to be able to translate the text from my chatbot directly into a foreign language. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to start by placing a button on the screen. You'll see we have a button, a series of buttons, and the one I'm interested in using is the open page button. Let's just drop this into this placeholder here. We can see the button on the page, and now I want to change some of the design properties of that button. So part of the Atlas framework allows me to configure the design of each one of these elements using simple just drop downs and simple design properties outlined from within the toolbox itself. So I could click on the page button. I can change the name on that. So we'll actually say this is translate. Right. Translate. I want to change the width of that button because I'd like it to fill this entire container. So let's go to the bottom and change the properties of that now. We have a button that actually fits within the container. So the design patterns of Atlas UI and the navigation layouts that were provided by my UX team have allowed me to drop a button into the chatbot and have that styled according to preset and pre-configured settings within the framework itself. So what we'd like to do now is to add some capability to this translate button. What I want to do is open up a page and provide the user with the ability to be able to select a language to translate the chatbot into, or the chat text into, and present that back to the screen in order to inline text translation. So we're going to add a page button to a page call to this button. So let me click on page. I want to create a new page. Once I click the new page, what happens is the system provides me with a series of predefined templates. So these are common page patterns that we see in both responsive design and in mobile design. They contain both a pattern, also a series of widgets, for design and interface, and also the brand that is being created from within your Atlas framework using the design tools provided with that framework. So I can create a common set of patterns that developers can consume to ensure that we keep a standard look and feel, and that we're utilizing the right page patterns for the right form factor. So what I'd like to do here is I want to create a form. I'd like to use a horizontal form, and I know that within my navigation layouts, my designers have built a conversational layout which allows me to keep in the same design concepts as I'm seeing on the screen, or inside the same design concepts as I'm seeing on the screen behind this dialog box. If I click on Atlas Conversation, let's choose that as my layout, and choose that as my layout, and hit create. Let's give me this form a name, translate, and hit the create button. What we now see is a new page that's been created, and within the page we can see that everything's been configured to keep in line with the UX UI design pattern of my chat. What I can now do is start to alter the widgets that are viewable on the page and use the toolbox to be able to drag in new capability. I don't want a lot of these widgets, so I'm going to replace them. But first of all, what I want to do is hook up this page to one of my existing entities. So the Mendix platform allows me to define my data model, allows me to define my navigation and microflows within the application. So I'm taking a very design-centric view at the moment, so really looking at how we build out the user experience to utilize the underlying data model. But I'll come back in a second and run through the options on the left-hand side here, just to give you a feel for what fits underneath each one of these particular screens and design patterns. So what I want to do is to hook up this page to an existing entity. And we've got an entity in our application that manages our chat. So let's click on chat. Now I'm able to use the attributes of that particular data table to build my page. I don't want all of these, so I'm going to remove some of these entries. And I'm going to start to add the attributes from the chat entity and new attributes to create my page. Okay, so let's hook up this particular, what's now called a name attribute, to the text. So the text is actually the text that's coming back from our chatbot. So let's click that, hook up text to this particular attribute here. And I want to hook up a new attribute called translated text, which is held against the chatbot, to my second attribute on the page. So this will show me the text that comes back from the chat. And what we'll do is we'll create the logic to be able to take that text, translate it, and present it to the user within this subsequent attribute directly underneath it. So one additional attribute that we need to add is the ability to be able to select the language that we want to translate our text to. And I can do that by adding in a new widget to my page. So let's go back to the toolbox. Let's open up widgets, as you can see here. And I can drag onto the page a different kind of widget. In this case, I'm going to use a drop-down. So we'll drop in a drop-down widget right at the top of the screen there. And we'll associate that drop-down widget with a translated language or a target language. Now there's an enumeration already in the entity which I'm going to use to do that, and I'll show you how we define that in a second or two. So let's collect target language. We have our text income, and we have our translated text. The final thing I'd like to do on here is I've built out the prototype. I'm quite happy with the way it looks. I've used the common design patterns that are available to me, so it's been pretty simple to build this page to drag and drop. But I'm reaching the limits of my capability as a sort of line of business developer, what you might call a citizen developer. I have the skills to take this application only so far. But I know there's a button here, and what I want to happen is that when a user clicks this button, I in some way want to call either an API or some logic to translate my application text, my chat text, into a foreign language. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this button here. I'm going to hook that button up to a microflow. Again, we can change the properties of the button. So let's say that we want to call this translate. So this will be our translate microflow button. And I'll create the microflow stub, because I know how to do that. There's an option here, which I've seen before, which allows me to create a new translate button. So let's create a new translate microflow. Apologies. So let's create my translate microflow. I get my microflow stub, which has a start point and end point. It passes in the chat message, but I'm unable to take it any further. I don't really have the skills to understand how to integrate with an underlying API or how to manage integration with microflow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add onto here some text. Please add some translate logic here. And my work really is done. This is literally as far as I can take the development. What I am going to do is I'm going to publish this. So I'm actually going to update the existing sandbox that's running in the AWS cloud with my branch line so I can take a look at what's happening. While that's working away, let's just look down the left-hand side of the screen. Within the web modeler, I'm able to create simple navigation through drag and drop. I can readjust these, for example, or add new navigation. I can view the underlying data model that's provided with this application. So here's all the data entities and attributes that I can use to manage my claims, for example. I can begin to adjust them, change them, add new entities to my model, new associations, referential integrity, for example. And we'll also see that in our conversation, we have our chat entity that supports the dialogue coming backwards and forwards between IBM and Watson. The final thing that I want to show you is the ability within here for me to control the theming. So the look and feel of an application can be changed without having to understand underlying CSS. So if I want to change, for example, the background bar color of my app, I can simply just configure that, apply the style, and that will apply the style across my entire application. So really simple, really easy for non-professional developers to build out the capabilities for great UX design. So let me now take a look at the application. So the application is now being published. So if I open up my app, oops, I hit the update button, excuse me. I'll just take another second or two to update that. So while we're doing that, what we'll do is we'll jump into our platform. Within the platform, this is where we define individual projects. So once I create an application within Mendix, I define a project. That project allows me to view all of the users that are associated with that project. It allows me to manage a collaboration wall, a buzz and feed to the project, and also to manage how I deploy applications. So everything from ideation to CI/CD, deployment staging, and so on. So let me just take a look back here. So I've now got my application which is running. So let's open up the application in preview mode. We now see the application with the changes that we've made. So let's open up our chatbot, and we should see our new page. So track a claim, we should see our new page appear, and in here we have our button. So we have our translate button. We click on the button. It opens up the new page that we created, provides us with the capability to select the appropriate language, and I have a translate button. Currently, the translate button doesn't go anywhere because we didn't create that capability. So what I now want to do is to utilize the features of the platform to provide some feedback. So on the right-hand side of the screen here, I can provide feedback into the app. So I'm going to say this is Nick Ford. I'm going to identify myself within the system. I have an idea, so please add new translate API, and we'll copy that into our feedback item, hit send. Okay, so we've now created some feedback. This is the feedback ticket. So now I've handed over the capability to our product owner. There's a product owner within my project that now has the capability to be able to take my feedback. Feedback appears within the project, so I have a feedback section, and as a product owner now, I can decide what I want to do with that feedback. So I can click on the feedback. I can view that Nick Ford, one of our Linus business users, created the requirements and built the screens for a new translate option, and I can decide whether I want to accept that as a piece of work into the project, which we can then have developers build against. So I'm going to accept it. I think it's a great idea. I'm going to submit this and drop that directly into our current sprint. So let's just submit that particular piece of feedback. What we'll see within the stories management, which is where we manage the requirements of our application, incidentally, there's an API which we can use to take in stories from third-party environments. We see the feedback item 310186 appear as a new story within the platform. Okay, so I want to hand over now from product owner to developer, API developer, or integration developer, someone that has the skills to be able to take the requirement that was requested by a line of business user, that was accepted by a product owner, and could take it to the next level to create the integration within the application. So we've swapped over to our desktop environment. The desktop environment provides me with more capability to create more complex, more detailed logic, and provides a different UI which is relevant for those kinds of individuals and users. But if I refresh and synchronize the model now, what we'll see is we'll see our new requirement come into the project, so I can actually hit running and inform everybody that's working on the project that I'm now picking up the integration part of this particular request. If I click on this button here, what it will do is take me directly to the page within the model where the user reported the requirement for new additional capability. So this is the page that was built. We can see the translate button that was created. And if I follow that button, I can see the microflow stub that was created via our line of business user and start working on adding new capability. So let me do that. I want to add into the platform a new routine for delivering our API. So I'm going to open up the App Store. I'm going to search for a series of connectors, and I have in my connector kit a series of connectors which allow me to link into Watson Cognitive Services, one of which is a translation connector. Connectors are simple ways in which we package up capability to link into external APIs or external systems. Let's download that connector directly into my model. So I'll put that into my model, which I've done, which means I can now get to, we're using that particular connector within my microflow. You'll see it gets added to my native toolbox. If I drop onto the work surface here now, the fact that I want to use the Watson translation services, I can start simply configuring the properties of that connector to pass in the relevant details to return a translated version of my chatbot text to the user. So it takes in a number of parameters. The first parameter we'll pass in will be the text from our chatbot, which is provided here. We need to have a source language. Our source language is currently English. And I now want to pass into the model my chatbot, chat message, translated language. So we'll see we have the ability to choose our enumeration, which is the language we want the user to translate into. And finally, what the system will do is return to me a translated text. So we'll call this translated text. One more thing to do. I'm going to actually update the data table with a new translated text so we can save those translations. So we'll just change the chat message, we'll commit it, and we'll also refresh the client. So we want the actual user to see that we've translated the text and to have the UI updated with the relevant translation that comes back from the connector. So we have a new connector, we've translated our text. And because I've got a few minutes to spare, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to utilize a series of other cognitive tools that came down with our Watson Services connector. So for example, what we have here is a text-to-speech synthesizer. So it would be even better if we could not only translate the text, but also synthesize that text so that the user can actually, the actual chatbot can speak to our user in the foreign language or the language that they chose. So let's just drop on to, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that using an additional microflow call. I have a sub-microflow that came with the connector, which we'll use just to save me having to build that. So if I open up an action call, call another microflow, and choose our Speak to Me microflow, which comes with the connector itself, I follow that. What happens is this takes the incoming text, it authenticates with the synthesized speech. We chose the voice Enrique for this particular speech file. It then presents a page which will hopefully voice our new translated text. Okay, so as a developer now, I think I've completed what I need to complete, and I want to commit my user story. So I want to update everybody in the continuum of users from the line of business developer or citizen developer who started off this idea as a prototype, to the product owner who then changed my requirements into a working story, and then to myself who synchronized the model, made the changes. Part of the synchronization was to merge in the branch line from our end user into the main line, so I'm controlling the process here, and actually the end user will be locked out of the web model for this process. So the control is maintained at all times by the overarching either development team or product owner. So our citizen developers and line of business developers are always working in a sandboxed environment, creating prototypes, utilizing the web modeling tools for rapid ideation. We then bring in those capabilities into the central environment where we can control them for deployment and build and test. So let's hit run locally. First thing I want to do as a developer is I want to set up and test my applications running locally on my machine. So what happens now is Mendix will spin up a local environment for me, which will run on localhost 8080. I can open up the page and we should see our application pop up working on localhost, and I'll get my options to translate the text. So let me track a claim. We should get our chatbot in a second. Let's go. Our chatbot pops up and we have our translate button. I'm going to go a little bit further in the text, so let's ask the chatbot for some help. It should give me a list of help back. Okay, so we have our help. Let's hit translate. I want to translate my text into Spanish, and I want to hit the translate button.
Puedo ayudarle a rastrear el estado de la reclamación de seguros. Compruebe en un elemento de sustitución o ayudar a responder una pregunta sobre seguros.
I'm hoping that you could hear that through my speakers. Effectively what's happened here is it's taken the incoming text, it's pushed it out to text translation in real time online, returned that translation back to me, presented that to my screen, and then spoke the actual written word using synthesized text. So we're stringing together conversational UIs, inline translation, synthesis of text to voice, which has been created over the continuum of developers from rapid ideation through citizen development through to professional developers provided the integration for that. The final thing that typically I'd want to do from here now is to run that application in the cloud. And because of the time limits that we have today, I can talk about how we do that, and perhaps if you want to take this a step further, then we can engage with one of our BDRs or salespeople around how we might provision this application. Suffice to say, I have the capability now to either push my application into the Mendix cloud, which runs in Amazon Web Services. It's one click. It'll deploy my application into the Amazon Web Services Mendix public cloud. First of all, it will commit my model back to Team Server, so it'll actually create me a revision of the model, which is held in the Team Server environment, and start to publish my application. Equally, I've configured the same application to be deployed into Cloud Foundry. So not only do we have the capability to deploy into the Mendix public cloud, AWS, we can also provide the capability to deploy to any Cloud Foundry environment with our Cloud Foundry public build pack, or indeed any containerized environment. So running a virtual private cloud with Kubernetes and Docker can be managed through our deployment engine within the platform with complete continuous integration and continuous deployment. I'm conscious that we've covered an awful lot of ground in a 30-minute session. I'm hoping that this has been valuable and it's given you a flavor for how collaboration and control across cross-functional teams with a product like Mendix is able to deliver not just rapid accelerated development, but also the capability to create great-looking applications that are visible on both web, mobile, and responsive design frameworks in a very short period of time. I want to wrap up this session with just one last slide, and that is to say thank you, and to say that if you want to explore the application that I just demonstrated for you there, you can log on to your Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, download the Mendix mobile app. The claims application that you saw in the demonstration is fully available through that app. You can experiment with that play with the application itself, along with a number of other examples that we've produced as part of the Evangelist team. I'd encourage you to do that. And with a minute to spare, or 30 seconds to spare, I'd like to complete the presentation. Thank you all very much for joining today on a Friday. It is very much appreciated, and I sincerely hope that we've been able to provide you with a succinct view of the capabilities of the Mendix environment. Thank you very much.